Good evening. Welcome everyone to the April 26th regular City Council meeting at April 16th. I'm sorry, it's not the 26th. We're moving. And with that, Dee, would you please call roll?
Mayor Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember DeLira.
Here.
Councilmember Fajarin.
Here.
Councilmember Gaither.
Here.
Councilmember Guido.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Great. Welcome everyone. The only mayor announcement that I have is I want to thank everyone for the support related to the start of the downtown project. It's great to see the community out and involved the project as it's moving along. It really shows the support that our community has for our businesses there. They've definitely recognized and noticed it, and I've heard a number of comments from businesses appreciating the community support, so thank you very much for that. Our next item of business is on to community comments. This agenda item is opportunity for public to bring comments, concerns, or other non-agenda related items forward. So these would be items that are agenda items that are not comments related items that are currently not on the agenda. So with that, is there anyone who would like to bring community comments?
Thank you for this opportunity to talk. My name's Carl Bemke. I live at 1735 Northwest Lamont Street. I'm a longtime Pullman resident and a longtime advocate for making downtown Pullman a more beautiful place. In 2006, your predecessors on the Pullman City Council approved the plans and construction for Pine Street Plaza. As hoped, Pine Street Plaza turned what was a not very attractive alleyway into a beautiful meeting place. The circular pattern used to lay the concrete pavers invites pedestrians to meander and stay a while. In many ways, Pine Street Plaza has become the center of downtown. It has the Christmas tree lightings, it has community events, and it's just a good place to sit and meet with neighbors and friends. Brochures promoting Pullman, those published by the city, by the Chamber of Commerce, and by other organizations, nearly always highlight photos of Pine Street Plaza and the Pine Street Bridge. As the city proceeds with the downtown project, I would urge you to bring the Pine Street Plaza to Main Street. Bring the circular pattern of concrete pavers up to the street. This will increase the size of the plaza for social events, and it will also call the attention of motorists who are driving by to one of Pullman's gyms. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to provide public comment at this time? If so, please come forward. 3 minutes.
Hi, so my name is Lisa Carloy, and I am on 1235 Haven Circle. And first of all, I wanted to thank all of the council members. You have taken a lot of time and paid a lot of attention to the conversations that we've had about Pine Street Plaza, and I really, really appreciate that. I know it is asking a lot of your time, and I really enjoyed the discussions that we've had. So Pine Street Plaza is near and dear to the hearts of Pullman Civic Trust because we were instrumental in the creation of the plaza and in designing the look and the feel of the space. The current plaza design extends that circular paver pattern from the plaza to the curb, and it creates an inviting and flowing connection with Main Street. And it's amazing to me how this small design feature has such a powerful impact. The flow of the pavers invites people from Pine Plaza onto Main and from Main onto the plaza. The pattern continues across the bridge connecting Main Street to the trail, and it's reflected in the pavers leading to the library and to the Pullman Heritage Depot. And in the future, we can envision High Street Plaza could also continue the design, creating a beautiful ribbon of connection throughout downtown. So tonight, we're requesting that council revisit comment number 8 on the Welch-Comer recommend, don't recommend list that you talked about last council meeting, and to consider extending the paver design to either the edge of the bike lane, or our preferred option is all the way to the new curb to preserve the flow and the ambiance. And we understand that any design change at this point must be cost neutral and time neutral. And so in order to make this request cost neutral, Pullman Civic Trust is offering to pay for the costs above what will already be required in the current design. As for the time, we encourage council to get more detailed information regarding what factors will slow the project down and to explore options that mitigate these factors if possible. The plans show the sidewalk area includes 8 isolated patches of clay bricks with concrete or pavers in between. And given the detailed work involved in laying these 8 individual patches, it's possible that simply continuing the circular pattern will be faster, and it could offset some other things that may slow that project down. So knowing where there may be time savings and if time may be extended over the entire project would be important to know in order to decide whether to extend the pavers or not. And so we hope that you'll ask Welch-Comer to provide some more detailed information about how extending the pavers will impact the project timeline so you can weigh the benefits against the costs. So we only get one shot at making downtown awesome, and we believe it's worth making this final extra push to try to make this intersection really great and preserve what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Carolyn Gordon, and I live at 1480 Southwest Center Street. I've lived in Pullman for 8 years. I've attended many events centered in Pine Street Plaza. For me, this gathering place feels like the heart of the city, and I'm thrilled that you have chosen to reinstall the cement pavers in Pine Street Plaza during the downtown construction project. This will maintain the continuity of this design that's also found across the bridge, in front of the waterfall, and around Neal Public Library and the Pullman Heritage Depot, the many gems of our city. My ask is that you consider extending this concrete paver pattern all the way across the bike path to the street. By extending this pattern further in the current plans, you visually extend the plaza. It will beckon to passersby and feel more welcoming to visitors and residents alike. This would mean directing Welch-Comer to explore this option and provide you with a list of timeline and cost changes. I believe you will find it well within the scope of the project. This would allow you to make a well-informed decision regarding the look and feel of Pine Street Plaza, prime real estate in the heart of Pullman. It is not too late in the process to make this happen. Thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Please.
Hi, my name is Bob Cady. I currently live at 920 Northeast D Street, but I have lived downtown in 400 Main, East Main, bordering Pine Street Plaza for the last decade. And I'm here to support Pullman Civic Trust as a private individual. And I believe that being that this is a once-a-century infrastructure project, and Pine Street Plaza definitely stands out as a generational success downtown, that bearing in mind the changes already to the plaza plan, from stamped concrete and 4 monoliths to restoring the existing plaza design, please consider their proposal to fully restore the design at the end of construction. I know the bike path has been straightened out. I know the monoliths are gone. Welch-Comer's working on the new design plan for what the flat work that's being discussed will look like. I think it makes sense to just restore it. It is the primary pedestrian gateway to downtown, It has been a resounding success. I know a number of you hold meetings there regularly, and continuing that design to flow into downtown with the pedestrians that come across the bridge would be a great way to maintain the success that has existed downtown while welcoming pedestrians into the redesigned downtown moving forward. Thank you. Please put it on the agenda for next meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? If not, then I'll close community comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Please, Bobby.
Good evening. Bobby Ryder, 800 Northwest Greyhound Way, and I'm here, number one, to thank you all for taking the time that you have to, over the last year, to talk with people and to get information and to contemplate things and that people are asking for, what they're questioning. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about trees and all kinds of things. And this is kind of one of these little elements, this plaza, that we really appreciate that you voted to bring the concrete pavers back and try to tie the two sides of the bridge together. And I think that was really important, and we're quite grateful for that. We'd also like you to consider discussing, anyway, bringing the pavers so that they're also connected into the downtown and not just into the plaza, but that become part, that basically replacing what is already there. And so it was a little difficult because of the way the drawings have been done for the monument design to really understand where the edge of the pavers were until we started measuring and beginning to understand what we thought your vote meant, and maybe you thought so too, I don't know. So I just want to thank you for that. And I also want to point out that I really appreciate the people that came to speak today. I know that there were others that submitted statements in writing that were very thoughtful, and I appreciate that. I know the question came up about ADA accessibility, and Mark Leeper with the Disability Action Center was willing to find out information about that, and in fact the pavers do meet ADA accessibility, not to mention that wheelchairs can go on the bike lane, which we're hoping to be able to go up to the edge of the bike lane. And then, if at all possible, we would be so grateful if we could get the pavers so that they become part of Main Street as they are now, because we feel that that is kind of the crossroads that draw people into that plaza, that becomes that multicultural center. You see students out there getting their pictures taken, that they're, their graduation or sending home to their families to other countries. And I've witnessed it so many times, just walking through the plaza, and here's another group. It's really become an iconic location in our downtown, and I hope you will consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? If not, then I'll close the public comment, the community comments. We did, as Bobby referenced, there were a couple of people that did send in and requested something to be read into the agenda. Those will be attached to our minutes. So. Can those be read? No. There's not a process for the reading. They just get attached to the minutes, so they're part of the minutes. The council members have already received them. So with that, on to city council member comments. And which direction should I start with? Carla, I'll let you start.
Yeah, so by now, as what we've heard in community comment, all members of City Council have had a chance to interact with Pullman Civic Trust and supporters of the Pine Street Plaza design change that extends the concrete pavers up until the curb. And we've received new information since the 26th on how this idea could be cost neutral and time neutral, which provides incentive to revisit this again. So I'm hoping that we could talk about this under new business and And I guess what I'm going to follow up with this is I would like to add an agenda item to new business around the Pine Street Plaza design change, or comment 8. And the evaluations we received on March 26th as a discussion item in new business, and I was wondering if I could have a second
So-
in that, for that
So
discussion.
let me just to clarify, we've, in previous council member meetings, and so Carla, this is just a clarification, in past council meetings, we've had under new business is when the council members would bring this up. As we went through Robert's rules, we realized this is actually the proper place to do it for a council member to request an item to be added to new business. So if you have an item that you would like to have in new business, this is the time to do it. What it does require for an item to get added to the agenda requires a second. So what would happen is Councilmember DeLira has requested a specific council item, a specific item to be added to the agenda. If there's a council member that would second this, then it gets added, and then when we get to that part of the agenda, then that's when it would be discussed. So at this time, I'd ask, is there any council members that would like to second this?
Second.
So Tremaine, was that a second?
Yes.
Okay. So that is added, so that'll be added to the new business, that item. Any other items? Anything else for comments? Okay. If not, then on Councilmember Weller. Okay. Councilmember Guido.
No items. No item.
Councilmember Parks.
No item.
Councilmember Vajira.
Just one quick announcement I'd like to share. The President's Commission on Gender Identity and Expression and Sexual Orientation, which I serve on, will be hosting a spring celebration on the 18th from 3 to 5, and they want to invite all staff, student, faculty, and community members. During this event, we'll be acknowledging scholarships and award winners, highlighting WSU LGBTQI+ accomplishments from the past year, and there'll be prize giveaways and music. So come build community with the LGBTQs, Cougs, and again, that's on the 18th. That's going to be in the Cub, 3 to 5 p.m. I think it's in the junior ballroom. So I'd like to invite the community to be there.
Thank you. And Councilmember Gaither, do you have any comments?
None at this time.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes councilmember comments. I don't have any comments as mayor. So next, we're on to, are there any requests for future agenda item requests? As opposed to what just happened with this current agenda? If not, then we're on to presentations. The first presentation is the Blue Bridge Alliance Police Awards, and Police Chief Jake Opnorth will start.
Mayor,
I'm sorry. Oh, wait a
sorry
second.
to interrupt.
I'm sorry. Is there any community comments? Thank you. Community comments to final agenda items. So are any community comments for items that will be taking final agenda? This would relate to anything that's on the consent agenda or the regular agenda items 1 through 4. Are there any community comments related to those items? If not, then Chief, I'll let you start.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak briefly about the Blue Bridge Alliance. Blue Bridge Alliance is a nonprofit program committed to fostering a culture of compassion and collaboration. Blue Bridge programs provide law enforcement agencies with a turnkey, community-supported program to effectively address the immediate needs of individuals and families in crisis. The Blue Bridge program is funded by donation. At the ground level, officers are provided with Blue Bridge debit cards tied to their community-supported fund, which enable them to provide that meaningful support at the place and time that it's needed most. Pullman Police Department has been involved with Blue Bridge since 2022. Pullman PD has over 20 officers that have been trained and issued Blue Bridge debit cards. Pullman officers are creative in how they use Blue Bridge funds, anything from emergency housing, emergency food, bus tickets, automobile parts, Christmas presents, or veterinarian bills. Blue Bridge, along with the Pullman Police Department, feel that compassion is not only a virtue, it's a strategic imperative for building safer communities. When law enforcement officers are seen as partners in addressing the challenges faced by community members, they create mutual trust and respect. This, in turn, leads to increased cooperation, improved communication, and enhanced public safety. And are there any questions right now? Or I'd like to turn it over to the mayor.
Great, thank you. We have. So for the Blue Bridge Alliance, they wrote letters acknowledging outstanding work by our Pullman police officers in leveraging the Blue Bridge program for strengthening relationships between our officers and our community. Blue Bridge presented the Pullman Police Department with some distinguished awards for our staff for their extraordinary contribution to success of this program. It's my pleasure to present these awards to our extraordinary officers. As a part of presenting these awards, I'll be reading from some of the officers' reports to help reflect upon the compassionate hearts of our officers and this program. The first award is to Tiana Dillon for Program Champion Community Connector Award. Officer Tiana Dillon saw the need for food for 20 to 30 people who were evacuated from an apartment complex where there was a fire. No one was sure how long they would be displaced, so Tiana used Blue Bridge funds to purchase pizza from Pizza Hut. She participated in the Shop with a Cop event where the Blue Bridge funds were used to assist grade school children in getting presents for their family. The next. She wasn't able to make it. Okay. Officer Abby St. Andre isn't able to be here tonight, but also received one for Program Values Award. Our next award to present is to Nathan Patterday for Overall Individual Agency MVP. Officer Nathan Patterday is one of the most prolific users of the Blue Bridge program and watches for opportunities to help those in need throughout the program. As an example, Officer Patterday went to a reported domestic dispute. The couple was arguing about how to spend their last $10 as they had diapers and other competing needs. Officer Patterday bought a case of diapers with the Blue Bridge funds and assisted the young couple with not just the item, but their stress as well. And we have a award for, sorry, this one keeps sliding on me. Jericho Dolan for a National Individual MVP Award. This is pretty exciting for a national award. Code Officer, Enforcement Officer Jericho Dolan responded to a complaint of accumulated trash and bad odor from a house. He uniquely used the Blue Bridge funds to pay for landfill costs when cleaning the trash out of the house and the yard. The officer's words around trash help is, the recipients had several complaints for trash accumulation around the residence. Upon response to this location, I observed they had approximately 20 bags of trash stacked inside their home. The smell from the accumulation could be observed approximately 25 feet from the exterior of the home. When I knocked on the door and spoke with the recipient, I observed a sack of garbage bags. I advised the recipient another complaint had come in about trash around the premise. The recipient advised that they didn't have any way to pay for trash service. It was an expense they just couldn't afford at the time, and they're trying to get caught up on rent and other bills they were behind on. The recipient advised they were storing bags inside the house so they wouldn't bother their neighbors. I advised the recipient I'd be willing to help them get back to zero by hauling the bags to the dump. I got approval from my supervisor, set up a time the following week to haul off the bags of trash. 2 trips were made to the dump for a total of 19 bags of trash hauled away, each trip resulting in a charge of approximately $15 for the minimum dump fee. We appreciate, I think that finishes that one. So. Thank you. So jointly, we appreciate Blue Bridge founder and CEO Brian Spracklin for acknowledging our officers' efforts. We also appreciate his desire to help those in need and designing this unique and helpful Blue Bridge Alliance program. Thank you again, and congratulations to these officers who utilized this program and in doing so fulfilled the Pullman Police Department's mission with compassion. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Francis, can I make a comment?
Please.
This is, I actually had that, I gotta say, Jake, at Chief, up north, I mean, so ever since you were helping with homeless many years ago when I first met you, you always led with heart and the utmost professionalism, and you've carried that into leadership. And it is exemplified in those who work with you, work under you. I want to thank you. I want to thank, Officer Patterday, of course I know, because we met before the Poverty Awareness Task Force shut down, and he had asked for resources so that he could make a pamphlet of his own to help with the homeless. I am continuously astounded and amazed by how much all of you do for our community. And strangely enough, I don't have any more words for it. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. It is an outstanding program and really makes a difference in our community. Next up for presentations, we have the 2023 Parks and Rec Annual Report. With that, we have Megan Vining, the Recreation Manager, and Kirk Damon, Parks and Facilities Director. So with that, Megan. We get the presentation up on the screen?
Yeah.
There, it looks like it's coming.
Oh. Does that need to be plugged in? Sorry. Thank you, Miles. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are delighted to present the 2023 Annual Report from the Parks and Recreation Department. We are proud to highlight the accomplishments and milestones that have shaped our community's recreational landscape over the past year. As you can see from our report that we have provided for you, 2023 was a year of growth and development for our department as we continue to enhance the quality of life for all of our residents through diverse and engaging recreational programs and well-maintained parks and facilities. Our commitment to providing a wide range of programs catering to all age groups remains unwavering. From youth sports leagues to swim lessons to senior classes, our goal is to ensure, just like our tagline says, your recreation connection, we have something for everyone. Our open gym and walking track numbers continue to soar each year. Open gym participants increased 25% with an increase of 2,756 participants, and the walking track numbers increased from 1,401 in 2022 to 3,942 in 2023, an increase of 64%. Our department served over 52,000 participants, and that transcended into recording over 86,000 in participant attendance. And we also added more than 400 new account holders to our system. In 2023, we successfully introduced and made changes to many youth sport leagues, youth camps, classes, and activities, which received overwhelming positive feedback and participation. We continue to maintain a full preschool program each year with our 4 classes of 64 students. Last year, we also graduated 31 students. With the increased use of the Recreation Center after school open gym time with our middle school students, we are actively working with local organizations and WSU faculty and students on additional programming for this age group. We continue to communicate and learn from our past and current participants and receive feedback on class offerings for the community to enhance our reach and provide something for everyone with our enrichment, wellness, adult sports programs, and more. Since 2020, and under our current leadership of Lendy Bankhead, our senior program coordinator, our senior program numbers are rising each year. Participation in activities and trips increased from 1,500 from 2022 to 2023. Council on Aging meals on Tuesdays and Fridays increased by 700, and sign-ins at the Senior Center increased by over 1,000. We also continue to have a very strong partnership with the Pullman Senior Center Association and its board. After nearly 24 years in the community offering year-round swim lessons, water exercise programs, lap swim, special events, and a fitness room, we continue to achieve high participation and attendance numbers at the Pullman Aquatic and Fitness Center. We served over 900 individuals in swim lessons, saw an increase in membership check-ins and memberships sold. Rainy annual memberships increased by over 50 last year, and the summer swim team, Barracudas, had another strong summer with 46 swimmers and brought home the Tri-County Swim League Championship. We believe in fostering a sense of community through our many community events. 2023 saw the continuation of popular events such as concerts in the park, movies in the park, and Parks and Recreation sponsored Leno Festival activities, bringing together residents and creating lasting memories, as well as our department staff participating in many other community fairs and events such as Family Fair, Pedal Pullman, National Night Out, National Lentil Festival, and Pullman Farmers Market, to name a few. I will now turn it over to Kurt Damon, Parks and Facilities Director, for his report on the Parks and Facilities Division of the department, and I can answer any questions that you may have for me at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Megan, and good evening, Mayor and members of the council. First, I just want to say for the Parks Division, I think 2023 was a banner year, if not one of the biggest that our department has ever seen. We changed the face, the appearance of many of our parks, the addition of playground equipment, restrooms, picnic shelters, and much more, and what I'll discuss in a little bit. First, just kind of want to point out a few of what I'm just titled here, Parks Assets, and some of those things I don't think a lot of the public might be aware of until you see them on paper. We have 18 parks that we maintain, and many, many more what we call green spaces or squares and triangles that you might see up and down Grand Avenue, across Bishop Boulevard, et cetera. And then that also ties into our downtown beautification program. We maintain 18 miles of trail, and one that kind of jumps out at me is 160 acres of green spaces when you look at our parks and cemeteries that we maintain. We also have a division under us that is our government buildings division that takes care of our facilities and custodians, so the maintenance that is involved in that. Last year, we closed 748 support tickets, and this could be things like for needing supplies, the pump at the aquatic center is down, the doors at the police department aren't functioning, et cetera. All sorts of tickets that come through us. Also coordinate many of the major maintenance projects that take place at buildings. In 23, we replaced the roof at Old City Hall and replaced chillers or air conditioners at the police department and also at Old City Hall that we're getting very close to bringing online here shortly for the summer season. Just a few other items to point out that kind of miscellaneous that run through. A lot of it runs through the recreation office at our RV park, over 1,000 reservations a night of RVs, tent reservations, and picnic shelter well in our park of 240 last year. So just some miscellaneous items I wanted to bring up there. When I talk about 23, I really got to look at what we did at our playgrounds and the improvements that we made. I'll leave Mary's Park till the next slide, but Krugel Park, we replaced the majority of that, kind of working to the across the screen there. Rainy Park, replaced all the equipment that was kind of in that sandbox area there, close to the gazebo. Sunnyside, we replaced about half of that, kind of a big slide tower there that's very popular. McGee Park, we replaced everything that was in that playground, about half the equipment at Military Hill, and then full replacement at Harrison Tot Lot. I've told this story before, and some of you have heard it I took about 3 playground reps around in 22 to look at Sunnyside, Harrison, and McGee, and they threw out words of iconic, unique, and non-compliant were some of their words. So when you look at what we were able to do last year, was pretty amazing. Mary's Park, our latest park to come online and pretty much finally finished. We started this project in 2019 with our own park staff installing the equipment. In the summer of 22, we were able to place the rubber surfacing, the pour-in-place surfacing, and then actually open the playground in 22. This last year, park staff installed the shelter there in the middle of the screen. We got the parking lot paved, working with Public Works Division, and then a new restroom installed there. So I do want to take the opportunity to thank Kiwanis Club for their financial contribution to Mary's Park, and we'll look to do a ribbon cutting ceremony in the next month or two to celebrate this park. Some other projects we did last year was our first year of doing some path maintenance, and what I would say crack fill maintenance. And last year we did a half-mile stretch along North Grand from Turner Drive to Terraview. This path section, there were 4 to 6 inch wide cracks every so often, about 15, 20 feet, that we're able to fill. And so something that we're going to look to continue on an annual basis around the town. We also installed shelters at Sunrise Park, Krugel, and down at the city playfields was one that was just recently completed. Some other miscellaneous projects we were able to do last year was cleaned up the entrance of Sunnyside Park. Last year at this time, you would not be able to see the far end of the park. It was just overgrown. So staff are working on a vegetation plan right now. So this year we'll replant that. We're going to widen the parking lot there and just make some improvements as well. And then at the bottom of the screen there was Lawson Gardens. That was a project that council really pushed for to use some bond dollars to add that. And we will open that up next week. Just looking ahead to 24, we recently completed our first phase of upgrading power at the RV park. We'll be having our parks, recreation and open space or master plan. We'll be starting this year. A project that the mayor is definitely interested in is expansion of pickleball courts, hopefully down at the city playfields. We'll be replacing about 600 feet of sidewalk and stairs at McGee Park, adding a liner to Rainy Pool, and as I mentioned, and adding a picnic shelter at Sunnyside Park as well. So just in recap, as you can see from Megan's report, projects we highlighted here, 23 was a pretty amazing year for our department, and one that we're certainly glad to be part of. And with that, we'll answer any questions.
You've honestly done incredible work this last year, and appreciate it. With that, Councilmember Weller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kurt, you kind of, I think you were sneaking in my head, because I was going to say it's been a banner year for you all also. Megan, I got to say, those senior trips, I was looking at those, I'm like, when do I get to be a senior? They look pretty fun.
You could join now. You don't have to be a certain age.
And fun little fact, I was typing you into Bing, and it said, Megan Vining is a notable figure in Pullman, Washington. She has made significant contributions to the community, particularly in the realm of recreation and wellness. Just so you know, that's on the web. So, I will say, sorry, I turned that off. I will say, Kurt, you know, when I go to the dog park, I look over at Mary's Park, and I remember when that was just a field. And I remember taking a tour of that horror house that was up there, and it is amazing. There are so many people who enjoy, and you can hear the screams of joy and, you know, probably terror from parents, you know, happening, and it's just awesome. And McGee Park, of course, I know that very well, living near there. And I told you before, I was there hitting on the drums, you know, before I even came in. And that place, I mean, until it gets dusk, there are kids, there are families going there. It wasn't like that before. And so thank you both for what you're doing. So thank you.
Councilmember Fajarin?
Thank you, Mayor. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for the work that you do. It was an amazing year. It brings me so much joy when I walk by the Harrison Tot lot and seeing just all it being utilized with that new equipment. It just truly is amazing. And someone who attends the Pullman Aquatic Center every single week, I love that membership is affordable. And I'll do a shameless plug that I think in the month of May, the Aquatic Center has that 20% discount, so make sure it's for a year discount, so make sure to get your membership in ASAP during the month of May. I know I plan on renewing mine at the same time. I just have a quick question, probably for Kurt. Further down on our agenda, we're voting on some water usage, and it was mentioned that the Parks Department struggled to keep common grassy areas in quality condition necessary to support recreational activities. I just want to know if there was any specifics areas that you could give us that might.
It's more, I'd say, kind of our open areas down at the city playfields, Krugel Park, Sunnyside Park, those that particularly are out in the open that aren't necessarily shaded, and then ones that kind of get used not necessarily on a year-round basis, but from spring to fall for our youth sports program, so it gets a lot of use and wear and tear. So that's primarily the areas where we struggled.
The areas that are heavily
Yes,
used?
correct.
Yeah. And so in your opinion, would increasing the water to 4 days, would that
For
help?
those areas, I think it would certainly
We should
help.
probably wait till that discussion
Okay,
on that,
sorry.
because that's,
Appreciate that. Thank
so
you.
this
I'll wait.
is more for the Parks report.
Thank you,
So-
thank you.
That, Councilmember Parks?
Thank you. Thank you to both Kurt and Megan for everything that you do. Megan, I just wanted to commend you for the outreach that you do. I hear your announcements on the radio, I see print, I see things online, and the department has really worked to get to where the people are, and I really appreciate that. And then Kirk, the playgrounds look amazing. Thank you so much too for Mary's Park, and also really appreciate the additional restrooms around in the city parks. That's not talked about a lot, but highly important. Thank you.
Councilmember Gaither?
Yeah, I don't know if I can say much that hasn't already been said, but as a parent of school-age kids, I'm truly grateful for the phenomenal work that you both are doing. I've experienced the improvements of the playgrounds firsthand with my boys. When I think about 7 years ago compared to today, it's night and day. My older son, he's in soccer right now. My 4-year-old is in mini hoops right now. So we definitely participate in the offerings that you all are putting together. And we both, and I can say my wife and I, yeah, we love Mary's Park. And so I just want to express my gratitude as a parent. I have a question. I don't know if you're going to have the answer to it or not, but I just want to throw it out there. When it comes to our baseball fields, what do you think it would take to attract AAU level baseball to Pullman? And is that something that's even in the realm of possibility?
I'll take a stab with part of this, and Kurt can jump in too. I think we work really cooperatively right now with Pullman Youth Baseball Association. So they have the baseball programs above ours, so starting 8 years of age, and working with them as they've had travel tournaments in the past. Years ago. I know that they're constantly looking at having tournaments again. Kurt and I work collectively with DJ Mackey, Recreation Supervisor as well, with PYBA, and then we also, with the help of Valerie Weaver, just put in a grant potentially for some upgrades at Sunnyside Park. That would bring that baseball field up to a higher caliber and be able to attract potentially some tournaments as well. So I think it takes more than just us, but also with the local baseball association and maybe some other user groups to help bring that all here to town.
Thank you. Didn't mean to throw a curveball at you.
Thank you. Councilmember Guido?
So I just want to echo what everybody is saying, but I know personally that looking at our town and looking at parks in different cities that you go to me, it's an indicator of an investment in what people think is important, and the rec opportunities, and the fact that we don't rest on our laurels and keep trying to get better makes me very proud. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Councilmember Gaither talked about the utilization, and just to tell a story, when we did the Easter egg hunt, the Easter egg hunt starts at 10 o'clock and over 1,000 kids that are there. And if you think about all that's going on, by 10:45, the lower fields had been converted from the Easter egg hunt back to soccer fields, and the kids were already playing on it. I mean, that's the utilization. I mean, it wasn't, oh, we're going to do the Easter egg hunt and that's that for the day. It was the Easter egg hunt was that hour, and then we're back to everything else. So it's exciting to see how you're utilizing that and really making the most opportunity for our community. And then three hunts at the pool for eggs. So thank you very much. Next, we have a financial update for 2023 quarter 4. And with that, Jeff Albright, our finance director.
Good evening, thank you. I'm here tonight for the quarterly financial update, which also ends up being the annual financial update for 2023. It's kind of a wrap up of the year. Just a couple things. We did implement a new software for financial software about 3/4 of the way through the year. It had some challenges, but I think it really does set us up for a good position going forward. So it's made reporting a little bit different, and it's taken a little bit of time, but overall I think it's going to put us in a really good spot. I'm going to talk a lot about the general fund. There's certainly a lot of other funds. We'll touch on them. General fund is kind of the one that impacts a lot of the things and is usually the one that draws the most attention. Here you can see just kind of the historical. Normally I probably won't do a 6-year history. Because of COVID really impacting 2020 and 2021, I extended the history a little bit farther because it kind of throws your numbers off as comparison. So I try to kind of give a pre-COVID snapshot, a COVID snapshot, and a post-COVID snapshot in there. So might be a little bit more history than you'd see under normal circumstances. But here you can see the revenue from the general fund. You can see how it dipped obviously down in 2020, back up. We're on a good path right now. It was strong last year of about 28 million. Budget was about a little over 25 million. Pretty conservative. Remember, these budgets were developed right as we were starting to come out of COVID. This does not include any revenue for airport as far as revenue does come in for grants and gets passed through to the airport. CARES are the ARPA funds that we use for downtown. Those are not included in the revenues here. And really, a lot of this performance that's positive to budget was driven by the strong sales tax collections, which you'll see more of. The primary revenue source for the general fund is property taxes. You can see there it's kind of a nice consistent line. You're not going to see a lot of variance in property taxes. The tax levy there last year was a little under 8.5. We collected about 8.4. That's not uncommon to have not fully collect that. One thing, though, to know for the council is that tax burden stays on that property. So we will collect it at some point, whether the owner eventually pays or at time of sale, there'll be the opportunity to collect that. So at some point, all that money will be collected. And it's not uncommon to be about 1% to 2% not collected in a given year. There is no property tax collections on university buildings, which of course is large in this town, government buildings or churches. So another thing you'll see is a lot of people, you probably heard this past year, get new appraisals on the property and went up pretty significantly in most cases. One thing to keep in mind is there is a 1% tax lid. So if your property valuation goes up 10%, you don't necessarily and almost certainly won't pay 10% more in property taxes. It's limited to 1%. So the property tax revenue only has the ability to go up 1% plus new construction. So it ends up being a little bit more than 1% every year because you get some new construction that probably adds another % or so. But there is that lid on that. Here you see the sales tax history, and you see how we've been strong really for the last couple of years. Obviously saw a dip in 21. The sales tax numbers are about a 3-month lag. By the time the business collects the sales tax, submits it to the state, and then the state submits it back to us, it's about a 3-month lag. So know that when you're looking at 2023, it's actually kind of the last quarter of 2022 and the first 3 quarters of 2023. You also see the sales tax on the kind of beige line there based off construction. So that's kind of an important one to track for a couple of reasons. You can see we got a little more differential in 2023, which is good. That means strong retail sales numbers, which is good. That'll be something kind of to continue to monitor. A lot of numbers on this one. I apologize for this, but this is just the other general fund revenues. The bold are kind of the main categories, and I highlighted a couple pieces under there. There is other use taxes in addition to the property tax and sales tax. The biggest piece of that is the utility tax and emissions taxes. That makes up the bulk of that other taxes. So utility taxes are taxes on various utilities within the city, and emission taxes are events and activities where WC providing obviously the largest part of that with their activities. So again, you can see a major dip in 2020 and 2021, not surprising as a lot of those activities were canceled, but it is nice to see a good recovery, and we're seeing numbers get back to pre-COVID there. Licensing and permits, you see there, one of the biggest things in there is building permits. And you can see that 2023 is actually pretty low, and that's something to kind of keep an eye on because as we talked about that property tax, a lot of that also relates to new construction. So the fact that building permits are down is somewhat not necessarily a complete indicator, but somewhat of an indicator of future construction. So that is something to keep an eye on. Then we have intergovernmental revenues and grants. This is revenue from other government sources and grants. You've seen a nice positive trend up there. One of the things that is there is revenues remitted to us from other government agencies that collect on marijuana and liquor tax. I know sometimes there's been questions about that. That's been a pretty consistent number over the last 6 years. Next is general government fees, fines, and penalties. This is just general government operations that we do. This is fees submitted for parks and rec activities, for example, is a large part of this. And then miscellaneous revenues, which a large part of it is driven by investment interest, and that actually we've received a pretty good interest rate over the past 1.5 to 2 years, which has helped us out there. Here's general fund expenses. You can see how things flattened out in 2020 and 2021. Not surprising as costs were kind of controlled. We held off on a lot of capital expenses during those years. So you've kind of seen that swing up in 22 and 23 a little bit as we've played a little bit of catch up on those capital expenses and catch up on some of those. You do see this is about $3 million positive to budget, which is good. But if you do remember the revenue slide, the revenue for the general fund was just barely over 28 million, so it actually was a slight negative. We did have slight expense over revenue in the general fund. That was kind of planned going in, and we actually thought that was going to be a little bit wider gap to use some reserves. So it is good news that that gap is pretty small, but it's something to keep an eye on because obviously it's not sustainable long-term to have a gap of those expenses over revenues. Talk a little bit about a few expense areas within the general fund. So here's legislative, so that's the activity of the council. The big spike is really related to, we had about almost $500,000 CARES pass-through grant that occurred in 2020 that was given to help local businesses during COVID. So that kind of created that spike of expense there. Of course, we had the revenue to offset that. One of the biggest things you've seen on the increase in the last 3 years, we've seen pretty good increases to voter registration election fees for the county expenses. So that's been a fairly big expense that has occurred within the last 3 years, and obviously will probably continue going forward. Finance and administrative expenses, you see the spike there. We changed in 2020, or after 2020, kind of how we did insurance, and we kind of distributed that amongst all the areas. So that dip there is really related to that change in insurance. There was also some expenses related to the City Hall project that occurred in 2020. Overall, though, you see a consistent trend kind of go up. One of the expenses that has occurred in 22 and 23 and will continue in 24 and even a little bit 25 is that ERP software that I talked about. The finance piece finished up in 2023. The next two phases of that software implementation are utility billing and permits and licensing, which will happen in 2024 and probably spill a little bit into early of 2025. Law enforcement expenses, this does take up a little over a third of the general fund expenses are related to law enforcement. So you see about $9.5 million last year. That was positive to budget. Again, much like many of these, you kind of saw some flat expenses during 20 and 21. And a lot of that was related to pushing off capital expenses. And so you're seeing a little bit of catch up. And so that's why you're seeing these increases in 22 and 23. A lot of that's related to capital. Very similar on fire and ambulance. Again, this is about 30% of the general fund in expenses. And you just kind of see a nice consistent trend line going up there as those expenses continue to rise. Community and economic development. This one you've seen some changes over the years as we've adjusted a little bit on staffing and services provided. But again, about a $1.5 million expense last year, positive to budget by about $140,000. The library and Parks and Rec were probably the two areas that were impacted most by COVID. And so you see this big dip down during COVID and kind of recovery up. And it really took, honestly, for those two areas, almost until 2023 before you really saw normal operations. Even in 2022, they were still, early in 2022, we're seeing some impacts to COVID. So you see these expenses recovering and as operations really finally start to return to normal. Same thing at Parks and Recreation, the dip during 2020, recover. You see kind of that spike up in 2023. That's related to a couple of things, and you heard Megan and Kurt talk about this. A lot of the participant recreation things that Megan talked about, their costs are affiliated with how many people participate in the program. So if you have more people participate in some of those programs, you see more costs. And then probably the biggest reason for that jump up is a lot of the projects that Kurt talked about with those improvement projects that makes up out of that increase of about $800,000. About half of that is related to increase in those parks projects. So not surprising there that you see that jump up in Parks and Recreation. So we're going to move now from the general fund into some of the other specific funds. Most of these are kind of fairly similar in revenue and expense over time, but I did put the trend lines over there. So the first one we're going to talk a little bit about is our streets and arterial streets. We have had strong utility tax collection. As I mentioned, the general fund, a portion of those utility taxes go to support streets. And that's been great. One thing to notice is pretty much if you notice every year here, the expense, while not by a lot, is exceeding the revenue. Our streets and arterial streets fund is probably one of our lowest fund balances based on the expenses. And so you've kind of continued to see that fund balance decline over the last few years. And really think it's something to keep in mind as we go forward of how we're going to fund our street, maintenance and repairs. Next is utilities, and again, you see a pretty good trend line. You see for a while there where our revenue was really exceeding. We kind of had a little bit of a backlog in some projects that we either held off during COVID or delayed either due to staffing or those types of things. So you're going to see more projects here. You saw that in 2023. If you do look at over the course, the revenues and expenses are very similar, but you are starting to see some increases as we look forward for more utility projects. Transit, in 2021 and 22, there's a little bit of variability in expense and revenues. A lot of that is related to a couple of grants that occurred, which also then related to the expenses from those grants. Overall, this fund is actually sitting pretty reasonable compared to some of the other ones. There is some timing issues involved a little bit in the revenue, which kind of created that spike with our contract at WCU as to when we receive payments. The total payments were done, but kind of the timing threw a little bit off. It is worth noting, though, that we've kind of seen a decrease over the last couple of years in that revenue from that WCU contract. So that's something to keep in mind in evaluating the services and expenses and revenues going forward. Our internal service funds, so this is our equipment rental division, our buildings, government buildings, our IT, and our GIS. And in most years, this will balance out. Again, similar to a lot of the funds in 2020, 2021, you saw some reduced expenses. You kind of see that made up. So 2023 has expenses. I think when I looked at the 6-year total of these, they were almost dead on expenses to revenue, which is what it should be, because basically it's a cost recovery for those. It is one thing to keep in mind, though, is as expenses go up here, basically those expenses are passed on to all the other parts of the city. So as expenses go up for these areas, they go up for every other part of the city, the general fund, other funds, and things like that. So it definitely has an impact, and something to keep in mind that, as inflation increases and expenses increase here, it's going to increase expenses in other areas. Civic fund revenues, so this is our hotel tax. Obviously, you see the plummet in 2020, not surprising. Not a lot of people were staying in hotels in 2020. It is really good, though, to see the recovery that's happened in 2022 and 2023. And that's really been important to the city, not only for this fund, but just in general for the city to see that recovery. So this has been good. It is something to keep in mind on this is the city council did make a commitment to the airport to use some of these funds to support the construction of the airport, and those funds are going to be paid out in 2024, so they're not reflected here, but they are being paid out in 2024, so that we have a really healthy fund balance here right now, but that will take that fund balance down. Still to a good, reasonable level, but it will take that fund balance down. Just a couple final thoughts to share, and I'll certainly answer any questions. In general, 2023 revenues were strong, which was great to see, particularly on that sales tax side. That was a big indicator with the limitations of what we can, property tax can go up. That sales tax is really critical in funding the general fund, along with some of the things like the utility tax and some of those other ones. Expenses saw growth coming out of COVID. Not surprising, it was within budget. But we did see some pretty good expenses coming out of COVID, either because of delays or because of the inflation that we've seen as, across the nation over the past year or so. We do have a few large cash outlays coming in the near future, obviously downtown project being the biggest one of them. But there is some other projects coming along, and even in the utility and streets, that we need to keep in mind that we're going to really take our cash down some over the next year. And inflation impacts are something we just need to continue to monitor. It's just something that impacts, the part of the thing that you probably saw with the sales tax. Some of that was probably related to inflation. As costs go up, obviously sales tax goes up. But if those spending trends cool off, or if some of those inflations are also affecting our expenses, it's something to continue to monitor. So that's what I have for you tonight, and I'll certainly answer any questions if anyone has any.
Councilmember Weller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff, I appreciate that, and your great rundown of everything. I do have a few questions regarding, and there's two here. So if you had a crystal ball, in your opinion, where could we as a city improve? I mean, if you're looking at all of this. And then the second one, and this is the crystal ball part. So I was recently contacted, actually it's today, by a rental manager, and he said the student population is down around 20% since 2019. Spring semester 2024, down about 900 students, with many rentals are empty. How is that going to, I mean, I'm not sure that we're seeing it now. How is that going to affect us coming up, and how do we respond?
Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball too. So it is, I think WC enrollment is really something to continue to monitor. I'm not sure necessarily what I would do differently or recommend differently at this point, but it's definitely something to continue to monitor. It does have an impact. You know, the impact from a student population probably isn't as impactful as the general, but obviously if students are around, that may impact hiring levels, job levels at WCU and those types of things. So whether that's still coming or not, it's hard to say. I know WCU is certainly making some impacts. They certainly realize the impact much more than we do, what that means financially for that low enrollment, and I know they're making efforts to address that. So I think that's something to really, more than, you know, make a decision now, I think we need to continue to monitor it and how it might impact it. You know, does that impact things like sales tax revenue and those types of things going forward? As far as recommendations, I don't know if I necessarily have a recommendation for something to do better. I do think one thing to keep in mind is what are the revenue sources? I think that's important to think about, particularly with, you know, the fact that the general fund is primarily funded by property tax, and if that only goes up 1% and your expenses go up more than 1%, you need to really start thinking about what are those other revenue sources, you know, to think about, and, you know, how do you address some of those things like our streets fund, for example, that really is seeing that declining balance. So I don't necessarily have a recommendation, but maybe just some things to continue to think about and monitor.
Others? Councilmember Guido?
Thank you, Jeff. More observations and concerns rather than questions. Of concern to me is the expenses related to, and you said particularly capital related to fire, ambulance, and law enforcement. And I'm sure that's connected to inflation, et cetera, but you know, that trajectory just keeps going up. And just don't know how sustainable that is when it's such a big part of the budget. So that's of concern. And then, you know, streets and arterial streets, I get what you're saying as far as this is an area that has the least amount of funding, and more we're realizing that our streets are not up to par, and all it takes is to drive around and see that's the case. And really kind of behooves us in terms of moving along with our transportation benefit district and finding other sources of revenue as you're talking about the need for that. So this is helpful to see. Thank you.
Councilmember Parks?
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for this really just comprehensive and complete report. Megan brought a question to my mind about fire and ambulance in particular, excuse me, or more our paramedics. I know that the number of calls that our departments are having is almost more than they can handle right now. And so in the next budget process, I'm imagining that will be part of the conversation as how to deal with that, because, I mean, yes, we are having dropping enrollment, but we're not having dropping state permanent population. Anyway, I think that's a difficult thing to navigate, is the budget the way it is and the amount of expense, but yet we know that there's going to be more need down the road. And well, it's here actually. So just wanted to say that publicly, that that is something that, and we as council will have to consider as well, because the department is getting quite overwhelmed.
Any other comments or questions? If not, thank you very much, Jeff. So next, we're on to the consent agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion of the City Council without separate discussion. With that, I entertain a motion to read the consent agenda by title only.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With that?
Aye.
Thank you. And with that, Thad, can you read it?
Item 1 is a motion to dispense with the reading of the March 26, 2024 meeting minutes and approve them as submitted. Item 2, a motion to approve the purchase of 2 new 2025 police vehicles. Item 3, a motion to award bid number 2024-002, water and sewer general materials, and authorize all actions necessary to execute contracts for such items. Item 4 is a motion to approve the transfer of sales tax revenue to CIP Reserve Fund for 2024 Q1 in the amount of $319,396. Item 5, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 2010907 through 2010974, totaling $769,430.56. Item 6 is a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 2010975 through 2011039, totaling $322,735.67. Item 7, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks number 2011040 through 2011102, totaling $410,803.48. Item 8, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks, electronic transfers, and ADP payroll transfers totaling $1,092,937.92. Item 9, a motion to approve an administrative services contract with the Pullman Moscow Regional Airport for 2024. Item 10, a motion to authorize an RFP for the installation of a Phoenix G2 paging system for Pullman Fire Department. Item 11, resolution number R-21-24, a resolution authorizing the mayor and the finance director to execute a project prospectus and local agency agreement for the citywide intersection improvement project. Item 12, resolution R-22-24, a resolution authorizing the mayor and the finance director to execute a project prospectus and local agency agreement for the citywide pedestrian crossing improvements project.
With that, are there any items that the council would like to have out to consider separately? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And now motion for approving the consent agenda items. Did I get it right? Help me, Mike.
Yeah, just motion for, and then is there any opposed?
I'm sorry, are there any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so those pass. On to regular agenda. So the first one is ordinance number 2406. And with that, Kristen?
evening. Yeah, I think we're there. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I'm here tonight to provide an update on the irrigation season component of the city's water conservation code, which was implemented in March of '23. Great strides were made in communicating expectations to businesses and residents in Pullman, especially those tied to irrigation guidelines. Educational engagement took place both proactively as well as in response to inquiries and reports received of those in violation of code. Our current outdoor irrigation guidelines have a season, which is set for June 1st through September 30th. The schedule allows for 3 days a week maximum based on even and odd addresses, and a watering window that opens at 6 p.m. and closes at 10 a.m. the following day. City-owned parks and grounds, as well as schools on the city water supply, are allowed to water 6 days a week, but only 3 times per week in any given area or zone. The feedback we received in '23 led us to realize that the watering window created confusion, both for residents, businesses, and those of us trying to administer the windows. The option to apply for a temporary exemption was implemented and well received. As you've heard, park staff struggled with keeping grassy areas in a quality condition necessary to support recreational activities. Violations were reported by city staff as well as residents, and outreach was initiated to educate and address such violations. So, taking what we learned from '23, we are proposing to change the watering window definition from beginning at 6 p.m. on the designated day and ending at 10 a.m. local time the following day, to the watering window being any time before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m. local time on the designated day. We're also proposing we update the allowed number of days per week from 3 to 4 that city-owned parks and grounds and schools operating off the city's water and irrigation supply city's water supply may irrigate any given area or zone. We believe this will bring clarification to the watering window and also allow us to support recreational activities which the parks are designed for. Adjusting from 3 allowable watering days to 4 should resolve the concern and still promote efficient outdoor water use. So this is our current guideline for our watering windows, which creates such confusion because it crosses midnight. Our update would create clarity in that the watering would occur all on the same day, before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m. on any given day. So even addresses would be on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Odd addresses on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. No irrigation would occur between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on any day, and it would allow for Mondays to be a truly irrigation-free day throughout the city, which was an original intent. So, in conclusion, staff recommends amending Pullman City Code Sections 10B 5.010 and 10B 5.025 as presented. Do you have any questions?
So with that, Councilmember Fajarin? No, this is.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You were first in, so you get to start it.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you so much for giving us presenting about the waters and conservation. I mainly just kind of wanted just a better picture on if that extra day that the city would be allowed in those green spaces. I personally struggle with us having the city extend an extra day of watering when everybody else is kind of restricted. I just think it's a little bad optics. And so I just was wondering what other council members thought about it, but that was just my concern. So I kind of wanted to get a general idea on how dry those areas those playfields get with 3 days watering.
Would it be helpful to, Kirk, if you can come and talk about the thoughts and rationale related to this?
Yeah, as I mentioned kind of earlier, it was really just those high-stressed areas, and I don't see the need for us to go to 4 days on every one of our parks. It's just kind of those select areas, where we see the high use. And I think there are probably some areas too that we can kind of strategically look at our different zones and play around with those and maybe extend, break our parks a little bit more into zones so half of it is only watered 3 days and the other half, instead of trying to do it all over one. So I don't see the whole need to go 4 days everywhere. It's kind of just some select areas.
I appreciate that explanation, Kurt. Thank you.
And for parks, you are watering before 10 o'clock and after 6 o'clock. Yeah, so they're following the same rules as us. I know last summer we got one sprinkler got on a timer wrong, and the community let us know when when we were watering midday. Councilmember Weller?
Yeah, so I appreciate this clarification. I know this was some confusion, for me especially. And one thing I will say, and, so being on PBAC and CARE cautioned PBAC not to pat ourselves on the back, the city to pat themselves on the back, but since it was only 1 year so far, but we vastly reduced our water consumption and helped the aquifer. But again, Kara, I will not say it was, correlation, not causation, so on and so forth. But I will say it's a great move. And I think this second year will be easier for everyone. So I appreciate the changes and adaptations, so thank you.
Councilmember Gaither?
Yeah, in regards to the First Amendment, what measures are planned to ensure that the new watering times are clearly communicated to the public, particularly the residents?
So I anticipate that we would have a very similar outreach effort that we did last year, and we hit social media hard last year. I know that we minimized what we put in print, anticipating the potential for changes and not wanting to put too many dollars behind something that had the potential to change, but we do have some basic things like business cards and going out to community events. We're ensuring that our code enforcement and our operations staff are aware of the components so that we can educate as we move forward. So we'll utilize the different tools at our disposal to get that messaging out, again, ensuring that people have the information readily available to them, water bills, the website.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Questions or comments? With that, we have before us ordinance 2406. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
That, if you could read it in entirety, please.
Ordinance number 24-06, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pullman, Whitman County, Washington, amending Pullman City Code sections 10B.05.010 and 10B.05.025, and ordinance number 23-7, section 1, 2023, and all other matters properly related thereto.
With that, is there any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Next up, item 2, resolution R23-4, and with that, Kara Haley.
All right. Give me a second here, make sure I can get this up. maybe. All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The action before you tonight is a resolution accepting the low bid of Motley Inc. for the Terraview and Crestview Path project. So this project will construct 12-foot wide multi-use asphalt path in 2 different locations of town. The first location is for Terraview Path, located on College Hill along Northeast Terraview Drive. The second is for Crestview Path, located on Pioneer Hill along Southeast Crestview Street. In total, approximately 0.4 miles of new path will be constructed under this project. So here's a closer look at Terraview Path in particular, which will run along the south side of Terraview Drive from Merman Drive east to North Fairway Road. The red areas shown convey the limits of the new asphalt path. Most of this path will be constructed where there is presently no sidewalk at all, creating a critical new connection. On the far west end, the new 12-foot wide path will replace existing 4 to 5 foot wide sidewalk. On the exhibit, yellow conveys new concrete sidewalk either at a driveway entrance or proposed new curb ramp location. The black dash line represents modular block retaining wall, which is necessary based on existing topographic constraints. New curb and gutter is shown as green and will be constructed along the full length of the new path. The last item to draw your attention to on this exhibit is the upper left corner, where a RRFB solar pedestrian crossing system will be installed. RRFB stands for Rectangular Rapid Flashing Beacon. With this type of system, pedestrians can activate a push button on either side of the crossing, and solar-powered lights will begin to flash on both sides of the street and also pointing in both directions of vehicular travel. These lights will flash for a set amount of time, increasing driver awareness to users crossing the street. This particular RRFB crossing location proposed is near to Cougar's Closet, where existing asphalt path initiates and commences westward along the north side of Terraview Drive. So here's a closer look at Crestview Path, which will run along the south side of Crestview Street from South Grand up to Thompson Street, just south of City Hall. The red areas shown convey the limits of the new asphalt path, which will replace existing 4 to 5 foot wide sidewalk. At the east end, the new path will connect up to the existing path that leads to Lincoln Middle School, providing connectivity on an important school route. The gray area shown represents new asphalt within the roadway limits. In this middle section, Crestview Street will be narrowed and new curb and gutter installed. This narrowing approach provides traffic calming and eliminates the need for costly retaining wall construction along the steep slope to the immediate south. Yellow conveys new concrete sidewalk at proposed curb ramp locations. Directly east of the new path, as labeled on the exhibit, a new RRFB solar pedestrian crossing system will be installed. So bids were opened on March 26th of this year. We had 2 proposals. A complete bid summary was provided in your council packet. The low bidder is Motley Inc. at $1,217,199, which is roughly $300,000 or 32.7% higher than the engineer's estimate. The second bid is $378,000 or 31.1% higher than the low bid. So the difference between the engineer's estimate and the low bid is primarily attributable to an underestimation of costs associated with mobilization, landscape and restoration, and pedestrian railing. For the bid items that are applicable to these 3 categories, the total price difference is $209,000, with over 2/3 of this amount due solely to the pedestrian railing item. So on this project, pedestrian railing is specified to provide necessary fall protection for safety purposes, mainly at locations where there are steep side slopes or vertical drop-offs directly adjacent to the new path. So the image shown provides an example of pedestrian railing, basically what I mean by that, for this same purpose, but this was along a sidewalk. Staff estimated the pedestrian railing bid item by utilizing contract unit prices from past comparable projects. The most recent was a 2020 project at $50 per linear foot. Before that, we had a 2018 project at $71.53 per linear foot. Staff attempted to account for market changes since that time by increasing and adjusting our unit price on this project to $100 per linear foot, but this was not enough. Both the second bidder and low bidder came in even higher at $140 and $250 per linear foot, respectively. For the 935 linear feet of pedestrian railing specified on this project, the realized price difference of $150 per linear foot is substantial. That's the difference between the engineer's estimate and the low bid, totaling to just over $140,000. In light of this, staff has identified a possible cost savings if a design change is made to utilize black vinyl chain link fence instead of pedestrian railing. The photo shown on the left is an example installation similar to what this would look like. Assuming an applicable unit price of $70 per linear foot for fence compared to the $250 per linear foot for railing, a potential savings of just over $168,000 is estimated if this design change is made. Staff reached out to the Parks Department in regards to this, since their input was the primary driver during design for selecting railing over fence to begin with. Either feature provides the fall protection measures necessary, with the railing preferred over fence, considering it's typically more accommodating for snow removal activities. Parks confirmed that fence is an acceptable alternative for this project, especially given the substantial realized price for pedestrian railing. So staff recommends awarding the project to the low bidder for several reasons. First, a comparison of the two bids to each other provides a good indicator that the low bidder's prices are fair and do represent the work involved. In addition, rebidding with or without the proposed design change is not expected to result in a lower price. Hold on. Okay, doing so would likely delay the project to next year, which would result in a loss of $750,000 in Transportation Improvement Board funds allotted to this project, which by agreement must be expended by March of 2025. Lastly, with the potential design change from railing to fence, the local match amount projected on this project becomes a manageable $300,000. Local funding would be from the Arterial Street Fund. Staff recommends council adopt Resolution R2324 as presented, awarding the Terraview and Crestview Paths contract to Motley for the bid amount. If approved tonight, next steps would be issuing notice of award to the contractor, followed by notice to proceed once appropriate paperwork has been returned and the contract is officially executed. Staff would in turn work with the contractor to make an official design change from railing to fence via a change order. While the exact price savings in said change order may vary somewhat from what was estimated and presented tonight, staff is confident it would be in that general ballpark. In terms of expected construction timeline, the contractor has a bit of flexibility. For Crestview Path, we expect a roadway closure is going to be needed on Crestview Street from Grand to Thompson to perform the work. Because of this, on-site work in this particular area is restricted to the summer months only, when the Pullman School District is not in session and relying heavily on this route. While the entrance to City Hall and Thompson Street will certainly be within the active work area, the contractor will be responsible for maintaining access to and from these areas and providing necessary traffic control measures to do so safely. The allowed window of construction for Terraview Path is anytime between May and late October. Less restrictions are needed here because the work can be safely performed with two-way traffic generally maintained throughout the work area. Also, upon award approval, staff will work to prepare and present a resolution at a future city council meeting that would look at restricting all on-street parking on Southeast Crestview Street. It would just be directly adjacent to the middle portion of that new path. And this is necessary because construction of the path will narrow the road from 36 feet to 27 feet for this particular stretch. On-street parking is technically allowed there now, but it's not being utilized. The existing roadway width will remain unchanged at the far both ends of the path, maintaining existing critical turn lanes into the City Hall entrance and at South Grand. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Councilmember Wright.
Thanks, Kara. As always, great presentation. My question is in regard to the fence, and that is in is there any kind of a significant difference in the life of one over the other and maintenance issues with the vinyl versus the
Yeah,
other?
that's a great question. You know, the railing is nice for snow because you have a bigger opening. So as you're pushing snow around, you don't have to find as many paths to push the snow to. In terms of maintenance, the black vinyl can last quite a long time. I mean, certainly the railing, I would say, has a little longer life. We did have a discussion, though. Sometimes we have sections of fence that get damaged or railing that get damaged. And I would say it would actually be easier to replace the fence than it would to replace the railing. I don't see railing prices going down anytime real soon within our current market. So I think the long term of the two options in this particular case, that the fence will probably have a longer, I guess, life when you consider the whole cycle of it. But both are fine components. It was just such a drastic difference that we felt like we couldn't keep the railing the way that it was on this one. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Delira.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm really excited for these walking paths to happen. I use the TerraView, that highlighted path quite a lot, and it's very clumsy, a little scary to see the steepness of that area too. So thanks for your work on this. I do have a question. The pricing on the railing and the chain link definitely are very different. If we wanted to pursue the chain link fence now, but we wanted, let's say if we find funds later on to change it to railing, is that something that is possible?
So what we are proposing right now is to award the contract the way that it was bid, which is with the railing. So it's it was around 1.2 million is what it's at. So if we had more funds, the contractor's on the hook to do the railing. So that's what they bid, and we would pay for it at that price. The change order would come after we award the project, and we would work with them to make sure that we can settle on something that's fair for everybody involved to make that swap. So it's just more a matter of having the funds available to make up that pretty significant difference. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion for Resolution 23-24.
Move to approve.
Second.
With that, if you could read the motion in its entirety.
Resolution number R-23-24, a resolution accepting the bid of Motley Inc. for the TerraView and Crestview Paths project and authorizing execution and delivery of the contract for said project.
With that, any discussion? Yes, Councilmember Delira?
Yeah, so just kind of seeing the stark pricing on the fencing. I'm wondering if we can accept the bid now and maybe consider a design change that would switch the railing to chain link to possibly save some money on the fencing.
At this point in time, we either have to accept the bid or reject the bid.
Okay.
That's our only options today.
Okay.
I feel pretty confident that we can make the swap after the fact to fence as needed, but today it is approving it with railing. I would come back to you at another council meeting, typically as consent agenda for a change order, especially if it's in line with what we talked about, that would change it to the fence. And we'd have that conversation with the contractor really early on because they have to order parts and plan their work accordingly. And constructing the fence is a little different than the railing, especially in terms of like fabrication and the timing for that. So that would happen really early on after the contract was executed.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I hope that helped.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Next on to Item 3, Resolution R2424. With that, Valerie Weaver.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff is here this evening seeking your authorization to execute a grant agreement for the Pullman Downtown Improvements Project. I worked with Deputy Public Works Clayton Forsman on this, and he is also here this evening and can assist with any questions that you may have. So a little background on how this came about. The Public Works Department received an email from the Washington State Transportation Improvement Board, or TIB, near the beginning of February, letting us know that they decided to open up an early opportunity application for Complete Streets funding for projects that would be required to be constructed this year. And this early opportunity is in addition to their regular yearly call for Complete Streets projects, which does not have that special requirement of being completed by the end of the year. The application deadline was March 1st. So just a refresher on the terminology, Complete Streets. It's a transportation policy and design approach that requires streets to be planned, designed, built, operated, and maintained in such a way that enables safe, convenient, and comfortable travel and access for users of all ages and abilities, regardless of their mode of transportation, be it vehicles, on foot, wheelchair, bicycle, etc. So that's the type of things that they're looking to fund with this grant. So in that announcement that they sent out, they said that this is likely a one-time situation where we will be calling for early applications. So if you have work that is considered Complete Streets type work and can get it completed this year, then don't miss out on this opportunity. That was directly from the announcement. So Project Downtown fit the bill for this unique opportunity. And since this project was already under contract, staff reached out to TIB to discuss this situation, project specifics, and get their recommendations for our application request. So after reviewing the project details and the January 25th bid tabulation, TIB indicated that our request should include bid additives 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7, which, as you know, were not chosen to be included in the contract that was awarded in February. And these additives include benches, trash receptacles, bike racks, planter boxes, and wayfinding throughout the project limits. So we proceeded, prepared and submitted the application before the deadline, and then on March 22nd, the city was notified that TIB approved and awarded $1 million in Complete Streets funding for the Pullman Downtown Improvements Project. So I want to make sure to highlight for you that this is not just $1 million to fund the project generally. It is very specific to Complete Streets, and it is very specific to the project as it was lined out in the January 25th bid. TIB went through that bid tabulation, and they selected a subset of very specific line items that would be considered eligible costs for the purposes of the grant. And those total eligible costs came to $1,117,874.50, which, as you know, is a fraction of the project's overall cost, and it doesn't involve underground utilities or things like that, which aren't Complete Streets related. The grant agreement provided for you in the agenda packet as Attachment A to the proposed resolution indicates that TIB shall pay just under 85% of approved eligible costs, that amount I just shared, which comes to the amount of up to the amount of $1 million. So putting in those 5 additives into the contract adds about $246,000 to the overall cost of the project. So that means we add $246,000, we take away $1 million, we're landing at about $750,000 better off than we were when we awarded the contract. This means the shortage of ARPA funds that we weren't able to fully pay for the project with that shortage is that much less. So staff is here seeking your approval to execute this agreement and accept this grant. Doing so will then necessitate a change order regarding the additives, which comes before you next on the agenda, and Clayton will speak to you about that. So So thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
With that, any questions? Councilmember Parks?
Thank you, Valerie, for the explanation. I just want to commend staff for seeing this and acting quickly on it. It was a quick turnaround. We receive a lot of comments from our residents that why isn't the city doing more with grant funding? And so this is a great example of how we were able to reduce the cost by our staff responding quickly. So thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Wright?
Thank you, Valerie. Great job. And I echo what Councilmember Parks just indicated, and this is really fortuitous for us. I typically deal with lodging tax grants, and those grants are reimbursable. What's the structure of this kind of a grant? So we get the full amount, and then we do the reporting back, or do bills and invoices get submitted, and then that's how it's paid?
This grant is also reimbursable, so we will need to be submitting our costs as they come for reimbursement for those particular line items.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve resolution number R-24-24.
Second.
With that, could you read the motion, please?
Yes. Resolution number R-24-24, a resolution authorizing the execution of a grant agreement between the City of Pullman and the Washington State Transportation Improvement Board for the Pullman Downtown Improvements Project.
That any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you.
Next up, item number 4, a motion to ratify change orders. For that, Clayton Forsman.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. This item to ratify a contract change order would normally come before you as a consent agenda item. However, tonight, given that this change order is contingent on what Valerie just presented, it felt prudent to bring this as a regular agenda item. This change order would officially modify the downtown improvements contract by adding back in those bid additives from the original bid that were not awarded previously. As Valerie just mentioned in her presentation, this change order is necessary to comply with the TIB Complete Streets Grant, which will cover 85% of the costs that you see in this change order. The good news is the contractor has honored their bid prices from their January bid. We're thankful for that. Some time has passed since the bid, and so that's a good sign. Quick reminder, Valerie touched on this, the bid additives are the benches, the trash receptacles, the bike racks, the planter boxes, and wayfinding. Staff recommends council by motion ratify change order number 1 for the downtown project. I'll take any questions you may have.
That, Councilmember Weller?
I do have to ask, so just so that I know, this is increasing the cost of the downtown project, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So we receive a $1 million
I know.
grant.
I
and-
completely understand.
And part of it goes to cover that. So it actually reduces our exposure that we have left to cover for the project.
Okay, all right, okay.
So,
okay.
so the price does go from about a 1.7 to just about 2, I'm sorry, 11.7 to just about 12 million.
Yeah, okay, all right. All right,
Any other discussion? If not, I entertain a motion.
I move to ratify change order number 1 to the Pullman Downtown Improvement Contract.
Second.
With that, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're on to new business. And so we have one new business item before us. And I'm looking for staff on direction related to earlier.
So the new business item is to discuss the pavers in Pine Plaza.
Correct.
I would encourage you to consider the executive session we discussed.
So on staff's recommendation, we're going to go into executive session at this time. We're going to, pursuant to RCW 42-30-1101D, to review negotiations on the performance of publicly bid contracts when public knowledge regarding such consideration could cause the likelihood of increased cost. The executive session is expected to last 5 minutes. If it becomes necessary to extend executive session, someone will return to announce anticipated additional time needed by City Council. The council may take action following the executive session. With that, it is 8:50, and we'll start executive session at 8:51.
The executive session has been extended for 3 minutes.
So it's 9:09 and bring the city council meeting back to order. And with that, we have a discussion item. We have, I'm sorry, a new business item before us and a motion that was made first by Councilmember Delera. And with that, I give you the first word in this.
So one of the things I'm hoping, and if there's any way to be able to have the Pine Street Plaza design changes that that the Pullman Civic Trust could be considered. I think it is a way to amplify the community center of downtown, which has been historically Pine Street Plaza as it, Pine Street Plaza as it's been in terms of being able to host events such as Music on Main and all of that. I really want to do everything that we can to have the community have a say on how our downtown looks like. And I don't know how to move forward with that. I know we did receive information from community members that it could be done at a low cost, as well as be time neutral. But I want to explore that, and I don't have the details on the evaluation that Welch-Comer gave us that made it 2 weeks. Instead of what we have been hearing it to be a project that would last a day. And I think it would be beneficial for us to get more fine-grained specifics on how that 2-week and monetary evaluation was done by Welch-Comer when we're hearing something different from the community. So just want to hear some thoughts around at least maybe investigating further the reasoning behind that evaluation, and in hopes to maybe potentially put it into a vote and have it move forward.
Other discussion? Councilmember Weller?
Yeah, I think Carla said it pretty well. I think, you know, we've talked to a lot of the Pullman Civic Trust, and yeah, I appreciate Bobby's time that she's put into it, the calls, whether I'm at the gym or not. I always appreciate it. And Lisa's as well, email as well. I think the challenge is, and I told this to Bobby on the phone, hey, look, you know, if the cost is, you know, negligible, and if the time is within the time, then yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think, however, as Carla mentioned, we don't know what we don't know. And we hear, you know, from PCT one thing, and we hear from Welch-Comer another. I think, you know, Welch, I believe, will be possibly talking about some of these things is it next week? Is it next week? The next meeting.
They're scheduled to be before us next week.
Okay, so, and I think they would be able to further address, as Carla has stated. I think also another thing to look at, even if it's not within the scope, and I don't know at this point, you know, you hear one thing and you hear another, that on down the line, those pavers could be put in later on. Now, I'm not saying, but I'd like to hear what Welch has and get the information. So I think that's a proper way to go about it, to hear from the experts.
Councilmember Parks?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with some of what Councilmember Weller said. My position has always been, as a council member, we are not designers, we are not architects, we are not any of that, and we need to hear from the experts, the people who are designing it and who are doing the work. As that input comes in, then we are asking them to come here so we have a question now. Is this something that can be done? We can't answer that. They can't answer that. Welch-Comer can answer that. So, as I've already said to some of you in an email, they're going to be here next week, and we are asking them to be prepared for discussion on this particular issue so that we can make a decision and move on, because there are already a lot of change orders coming in from the contractors. So this project is already gaining momentum, and we have to make the decision so that they know what to do and so that we know what to expect. So the recommendation, I believe, for me would be, let's talk to Welch-Comer next week and at our meeting and see what they say, and maybe they'll have some additional information for us that we don't have at this moment that we can share.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Councilmember Parks. For clarification, Thad, the motion that was originally, when this was originally brought up, that was before us, was for the design item, the specific design item, for it to be moved forward for consideration. Is that?
I understood it just to be put on the agenda discussion
To be
about
put on this, so
the
it's on the agenda to
design.
discuss. So at this time, there is no motion to specifically do anything related to it. So I just want to make sure that we're in that discussion. So we're not debating a specific motion. We're in the discussion stages right now. Councilmember Wright?
And I think I've had this discussion with some of you, and the best way for me to look at this is that we have to consider the project in context. And I think what we're doing is taking it out of context. If this were just a standalone project of the Pine Street Plaza extending the pavers, that's one thing. But it's not. It's tied to everything else that's going on around it, in the middle of it, in front of it. And we still, at this point, don't know, as Nathan said, we don't know what we don't know about what all those contingent pieces are. And that's what we're hoping to be able to have Welch Comer get into this a little more specifically with us so that we do indeed know what we're dealing with in context and not out of the context. That's the, in my little simple brain, that's the best way that I could kind of wrap my arms around that, if that makes any sense. Just trying to share.
Other discussion? Councilmember Gaither?
Yeah, I don't have much to say either, aside from the fact that, yeah, as the other council members mentioned, I'm not an expert, and, you know, we're relying on the experts, and it's a huge project. It's monumental. You know, as some of the community members said, we do want to get this right. And I think it's just important for us to ask Welch Comer those questions in the next meeting. I think that's the path forward, to ask Welch Comer, the experts, those questions.
So what I'm hearing is really a consensus from the council that if we're looking at what was presented, this is community comment number 8 related to Pine Street Plaza, retain all pavers up to the back of the curb at Pine Street Plaza. That's the item that is being discussed, where there was an estimated cost and there was also an estimated extension. And what I hear from the council is you'd like for us to direct Welch Comer, in order to, as part of their presentation, to be able to provide more information related to both of those estimates as it relates to it. And then at that point in time, if council desires, then this would come back as an agenda item. Is that what I'm hearing? So future agenda item, and then I'm going to ask a question: does this need to be put onto the agenda because it's going to come after I ask the question for changes to the agenda where their presentation is? Because their presentation falls after the requests for adding the agenda item.
I would suggest that we be kind of flexible and see what happens at the next meeting, because there's going to be a presentation.
Sure. And council will have the ability to ask questions, and we'll be reaching out to Welch Comer, making sure they watch this part of the meeting to prepare themselves for some of the questions they're going to receive next time. I know that the first set of change orders that council asked Welch Comer to bring back, items 1 through 7, will not be on the next agenda item. So there will be another opportunity on that. So I would concur with the city attorney, and there's that flexibility there.
And the piece that I think would be helpful for clarification also is, I know in the materials that we received, related to Civic Trust commitment and their offer. It was specific to costs and labor, and whether that includes all costs and labor related to this change, or whether it's related just to additional, I mean, what those are specific are, because this change order, if this was something done, it could open up additional things. So I'd ask for staff to be able to have that conversation so that we so for council, not only do we have the estimated cost, but we know what cost would be covered by Civic Trust versus what cost would be additional cost that the council would need to pick up.
So to clarify, are you assigning us to talk to Civic Trust for clarification going into next week? Or what did I miss?
No, I mean, there's going to be a question that's going to come before council related to what additional cost there is. And whether all the costs are covered, or whether there's additional costs related to council that aren't covered related to what Civic Trust has offered. So that, and that's it's a difficult one when we don't know until we hear from Welch Comer. But there is that piece in play. Yeah, Councilmember Waller.
Thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong, has Welch Comer also looked at the information from PCT?
I can't answer that.
Okay. That may be something just to ask Welch Comer, in that, to make sure that they
We can
understand.
forward that information to Welch Comer for him.
Great.
So we're requesting for Welch Comer to, as a part of their presentation, to include information related to the non-recommended request that was comment number 8, and to be able to report back to council related to specifically the cost and the extension. Anything else? Okay, with that, I believe we're at the den. So with that, I move for adjournment.
Move to approve. Okay, you approve what?
Adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.